The bed was empty, not slept in messy, but sterile. The sheets were pulled taut, the pillow undisturbed. It was 3:17 a.m. when the silent alarm triggered a vibration in the parents' wrists, a signal they'd hoped would break the cycle. But the room was already still, the air was cold. The other twin, Liam, lay awake in the adjacent bed, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't heard a thing. There was no struggle, no goodbye. Just the absence where his sister Ilara had been moments before. The family didn't call the police. There were no frantic searches. Instead, a quiet, grim ritual unfolded. The parents entered the room, their faces etched with a resignation that ran deeper than grief. They looked at Liam, then at the empty bed. A nod passed between them. This was the pact. This was the inheritance. One twin always vanishes. The other is left to bear the memory. This isn't a mystery to be solved. It's a curse to be endured. The silence that followed was the heaviest sound of all. To understand the weight of that silence, we must go back to the beginning, to the source of the shadow that fell over this bloodline. Generations ago, the family faced extinction. A great famine had gripped the land and sickness followed. The original twins, a brother and sister named Alistair and Annabelle, watched as their family withered away. They were the last hope, but the soil was barren, and death was a constant visitor. In their desperation, they sought help from a source outside the realm of conventional medicine or prayer. The stories are fragmented, passed down in hushed tones, but the core of the bargain remains consistent. They made an agreement with something ancient, something that dwelled in the forgotten places of the world. The terms were stark: prosperity and protection for the family line, in exchange for a recurring sacrifice. The entity demanded a balance of duality. For every generation of life it granted, it would claim one of two. The pact was sealed not with a signature, but with a symbol carved into the foundation stone of the original homestead, a mark that would be hidden but never forgotten. The first disappearance was the proof of concept. Annabelle vanished on the eve of her 18th birthday. There was no evidence of foul play, no logical explanation. She was simply gone. And as promised, the family's fortunes reversed. The rains came. The harvests were plentiful. The sickness abated. But the cost was etched into Alistair's soul. He was the first survivor, the first to carry the unbearable knowledge that his family's survival was purchased with the life of his other half. He established the rules. The secret must be kept. The pattern must be accepted. The curse became the foundation upon which their future was built, a dark engine fueled by loss. This knowledge became the family's true inheritance, more powerful than any land or wealth. The silence wasn't just an absence of sound. It was an active, cultivated tradition. From childhood, members are taught a deep-seated distrust of outsiders. Friendships are discouraged. Relationships beyond the family are viewed with suspicion. The world outside cannot be allowed to see the cracks in their foundation, because the cracks lead straight to the abyss. Initiation into the full truth happens on a specific birthday, the 16th. It is a ritual devoid of celebration. The child is taken to a private room, often a study lined with portraits of ancestors, each pair of eyes holding the same secret. There, a parent reveals the family's chronicle, a leather-bound book detailing every set of twins and every disappearance. The shock is visceral. The world they knew dissolves, replaced by a reality governed by a cruel and inexplicable law. Some rebel. Most succumb to a wary acceptance. This is their destiny. The psychological burden on the parents is a special kind of torment. They bring children into the world knowing that one will be taken. They raise two individuals, loving them equally, while silently counting down the days to an inevitable loss. This knowledge shapes every interaction, every birthday party, every moment of joy, tinging it with the bittersweet awareness of its impermanence. They become architects of a normalized tragedy. Over time, a coded language has developed. They don't speak of death or loss, they speak of the passing or the transition. The twins are never referred to as such in front of others. They are the children. This linguistic fortress isolates them further, creating a closed ecosystem of dread where the unspoken truth is the most powerful presence in the room. The family exists as an island, and the water surrounding it is made of silence. The family chronicle is the physical manifestation of their curse. It's not a book of genealogy, it's a ledger of loss. Page after page documents the pattern with a chilling consistency that defies coincidence. For over 2 centuries, every generation has produced twins. And in every generation, one has vanished, always around the age of 18. The entries are sparse, written in a clinical hand that tries to mask the horror. Elias vanished 14th of October, 1892. His brother Samuel remained. Catherine vanished 3rd of June, 1941. Her sister, Eleanor, remained. The entries form a macabre rhythm, a heartbeat of absence that pulses through the family's history. But within this rigid pattern, the circumstances of the vanishings vary in ways that deepen the mystery. Some disappear from locked rooms with windows bolted from the inside. Others vanish in plain sight during a walk in the woods or simply stepping into the next room never to return. One account from the 1920s describes twin sisters sitting by the fireplace. One leaned forward to tend the flames, and when she leaned back, her sister was gone. The chair was still warm. These aren't kidnappings. There's no evidence of struggle, no ransom notes. It's as if the individual is simply retracted from reality. The moments leading up to each event, however, share eerie similarities. Survivors' accounts, fragmented by trauma but consistent in their core details, speak of a sudden drop in temperature, a peculiar silence that swallows all ambient sound, and a shared, unspoken feeling of dread that settles over both twins' hours before the event, a sense of impending separation that they can feel but cannot articulate. It's a physiological and psychological alarm bell, ringing for a fate they are powerless to avoid. This chronicle of absence proves the curse is not a legend. It is a documented, repeating phenomenon. The family tree is not a map of lineage, but a diagram of a recurring wound. Each branch splits, and one half is always severed, leaving a scar that is passed down to the next generation. The dates and names change, but the outcome remains terrifyingly the same. The twin who remains inherits a life defined by a ghost. They are the keeper of the memory, the witness to the void. Their existence becomes a monument to the one who is gone. Imagine waking up every day to a reflection that is no longer complete. The survivor's life is a study in complex, often contradictory, psychology. There is the profound grief, a loss so fundamental it reshapes their soul. But intertwined with that grief is a corrosive guilt, the unanswerable question, why me? Why was I spared? This guilt is often accompanied by a dark, secret sense of relief that they themselves were not taken, a feeling they can never confess without feeling monstrous. This burden shapes them in unmistakable ways. They often become the custodians of the family secret, the ones who feel the weight of the history most acutely. They are frequently quiet, introspective, their eyes holding a depth of understanding that belies their age. They see the world through a lens of impermanence, knowing that stability is an illusion, relationships are difficult. How do you explain the shadow that follows you? How do you love someone when you know on a visceral level that those you love can be erased in an instant? The relationship with their parents is particularly strained. The parents look at the surviving twin and see a reminder of their failure to protect both children. The survivor looks at their parents and sees the architects of their fractured existence, the people who knew this would happen and did nothing to stop it. There is love there, but it is a love complicated by resentment, by unspoken accusations, and by a shared trauma that is too painful to discuss. They are a family bound together by a secret, but isolated from each other by the very thing that connects them. The survivor is left with a life sentence of questions. They replay every childhood memory, searching for a clue, a sign they missed. They wonder if their twin is dead or trapped somewhere, or if they ever existed at all. They are haunted not just by a memory, but by the crushing weight of the unanswerable. Their life is the price of the family's continuity, a living sacrifice left behind to ensure the curse continues its grim work into the future. They are the anchor that keeps the family moored to its dark destiny. After generations of this pattern, a question hangs in the air, heavier than the silence itself. Is this a literal supernatural curse, or is it something else? The family is divided between those who uphold the lore of the ancient pact and those who search for a rational explanation. The truth may be more complex than either side admits. One theory suggests this is not a supernatural event, but a self-perpetuating psychological pattern, a form of inherited trauma so profound it manifests as a shared delusion. Could the initial tragedy of Annabelle's disappearance have been a simple, tragic accident, a crime of opportunity? The story of a pact, then, would be a narrative created by a grieving brother to make sense of the senseless. Each subsequent generation, raised with this terrifying expectation, might subconsciously reenact the story. The vanishings could be staged disappearances, or even a form of psychological breakdown where one twin, unable to bear the pressure, simply walks away, their departure mythologized by a family conditioned to see magic in the darkness. The curse, in this light, is a story they tell themselves to explain their own complicity in a cycle of loss. This theory intersects with the deep-rooted mythology of twins. Throughout history, twins have symbolized duality, light and dark, good and evil, one soul split into two bodies. What if the family has internalized this symbolism to a pathological degree? The pact narrative enforces the idea that one twin must be sacrificed for the other to thrive, that balance can only be achieved through subtraction. This belief could create an unconscious pressure on one twin to fulfill the role of the sacrifice, or on the family to subtly encourage the outcome they've been taught is inevitable. The curse becomes a belief system, and beliefs have immense power to shape reality, yet the consistent physical details challenge a purely psychological explanation. The sudden temperature drops, the identical sensations reported by survivors across centuries, these are hard to dismiss as mass hysteria. This leads to another, more unsettling possibility, a genetic or neurological trigger. Perhaps a unique genetic marker carried by the family predisposes them to a specific psychological break at a certain age, a break that manifests as a fugue state or a total dissociation, making one twin simply wander away, lost to their own mind. The curse would then be a biological time bomb, passed down through DNA, its timing as predictable as puberty. The family's secrecy would have the unintended consequence of preventing outside scientific scrutiny that could potentially identify and treat the condition. Every attempt to break the cycle has failed because they are fighting the wrong enemy. They're trying to disprove a ghost when they should be examining their own blood. The current generation, however, is no longer content with ancient stories or fatalistic acceptance. Raised in an age of technology and skepticism, they are mounting the first genuine rebellion against the curse. They see the family's tradition not as sacred, but as a prison. This has created a deep fracture between the elders, who view defiance as a dangerous arrogance, and the younger members who believe the curse can be beaten with logic and surveillance. Their first line of defense was technology. When the latest twins, Liam and Ilara, were born, their parents, despite their own resignation, agreed to an experiment. The children's room became a fortress of monitoring. Motion sensors, biometric sleep trackers, 24/7 audio and video recording, every device was meant to capture the moment of truth, to provide empirical data that could finally explain the inexplicable. The family watched the feeds with a desperate hope. But as the twins approached 18, a grim certainty set in. They all knew, deep down, that the curse did not care about technology. It was older than electricity, older than reason. The devices were a modern talisman against a primordial fear, and like all talismans, they were destined to fail. The silence that followed Ilara's disappearance was proof. The cameras showed nothing. The sensors detected no intrusion. The curse had operated on a plane beyond their instruments. This technological failure forced an even more painful ethical dilemma to the surface. Should members of this family ever have children? If you know, with near certainty, that any twins you conceive will be subject to this fate, is bringing them into the world an act of love or a profound cruelty. Some younger cousins have chosen to remain childless, deciding to end the line with them rather than continue the cycle. Others argue this is letting the curse win, that life, even a fractured one, is worth living. This debate has turned family gatherings into tense battlegrounds, with accusations flying between those who see abstinence as a moral choice and those who see it as a surrender to darkness. The rebellion, therefore, is not a unified front. It's a scattered, desperate series of actions. Some are researching the family's history, searching for a loophole in the original pact's terms. Others are quietly seeking psychological help, breaking the vow of silence for the first time, trying to untangle the knots of inherited trauma. But they all move with the knowledge that time is not on their side. The pressure is mounting as the next generation of cousins reaches marrying age. The question is no longer if the curse will strike again, but whether this fractured, defiant generation can change the script their family has been following for centuries. The weight of that question is enough to silence anyone, but Alara's disappearance was different. It broke the established pattern in a way that sent a tremor through the family's foundation. For the first time, the surviving twin, Liam, claimed to have seen something. In the moments before the silent alarm, he described a flicker in the air, like a heat haze hovering over his sister's bed. He felt a pull, not a push, a sensation of being drawn inward. This wasn't a passive vanishing. It was an active taking. And then, a single, tangible clue was left behind. A locket that had belonged to the very first twin, Annabelle, an heirloom thought lost to history. It lay on Alara's pillow, cold to the touch. This was not part of the script. The curse was not just repeating, it was communicating. It was leaving a trail. The wall of silence developed its first crack, because Liam was no longer willing to be just a survivor. He was now a witness. The family's grim acceptance began to curdle into a dangerous, hopeful suspicion. What if the rules were not absolute? What if the pact was not a fixed sentence, but a contract with terms that could be reinterpreted or even broken? This potential unraveling forces us to confront the true weight of this legacy. The curse is more than a supernatural anomaly. It is a profound exploration of what we inherit. It asks a brutal question: what is the cost of a family's survival? For generations, the price has been paid in a specific currency: the life of one child. The family's continued existence is a monument built on a foundation of absence. Each generation has had to perform a terrible calculus, weighing their own lives and prosperity against the certainty of a future loss. This is the shadow in the bloodline, the psychological DNA that is as potent as any genetic code. It reveals how trauma can become tradition, and how a story, told often enough, can become a cage. The survivors are left to find meaning in a legacy defined by loss, to build an identity around a void. The curse is a metaphor for the inescapable patterns that haunt every family, the secrets and sorrows that are passed down like heirlooms. Sometimes with a heavier weight than any tangible object. The silence following Alara's disappearance is different now. It's no longer just heavy, it's charged. It's the silence before a storm. The old questions about fate and acceptance have been replaced by new, more dangerous ones about agency and defiance. The curse continues its rhythm, but the family's response has fundamentally shifted. The echo of that empty bed is no longer just a sound of grief. It is the sound of a question hanging in the air, a question that the next generation will have to answer. Do we continue to endure, or do we finally try to break the cycle? The story is not over. It has simply entered a new, more volatile chapter.